we will go to Representative Foley, 5169. And this act requires electric transmission and electric distribution companies to periodic equipment inspections.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is a bill that I put in last year and actually the session before that and the session before that. And this is talking about requiring electric transmission and electric distribution companies to conduct periodic equipment inspections. I didn't know how timely this was going to be. And as of last week, what we saw with the gas company. This is looking specifically at the electric companies and checking their equipment. But I'm also working on, just to give you a heads up, on the gas company, a bill to go along with this. What we have to look at is federal regulations with the gas one, so that will come later. And it's just simply asking that there's inspections that are done. So we might be able to catch something beforehand. Last year we had, with the electric version of it, we had 10 substations that went down and people were without power for a period of time. Things like this have happened. You see hanging wires, you see poles that are crooked or half poles connected to another pole. You see erosion issues, rusty things that can cause a major problem. It has an effect on the economy when people lose power, when they lose their heat. We just saw that. I don't think I need to describe that. And it's a small measure to check the equipment. And it's not a question of that National Grid doesn't have the people. I was able to see that they certainly have enough people. The past week when I go to work in Portsmouth, when I come up the Newport Bridge and saw thousands of workers at the Newport High Line, there are people there and able to get things done. When an emergency happens, get those people out there and checking the equipment. They're there, they want to work. It really comes from the corporate level, and if the corporate level wants to spend the money to make sure that the equipment is functioning, we could have less problems here in the state of Rhode Island. So again, I'll be coming forward with a gas one. Representative Carson can certainly take that on since that was her district, but we're looking at the federal regulations. But again, this is a simple thing. When I was on the town council for 10 years, maintenance, that was the thing that we did in South Kingstown. When you review things, you don't have spikes. When you don't have spikes, you don't have increases in your taxes. You won't have increases in your utility costs that are passed on to the consumer. So that's all this bill is asking for, and giving us some direct review of what we have and put the workers to work, and they're there, and make sure that people don't lose power or heat again. So that's my testimony on that particular bill. I don't know if you want to take somebody else, and I'll stand back for my next bill too.
Do you know if this language is used in any other states?
I do not. No, I think it was looked and resourced as far as what Massachusetts did. I think I can say that with certainty. I'm not sure about other states if they followed that, but I could follow up with you when I sit next to you by Wednesday.
Representative Duncan.
You said that 10 substations went down. Was that by neglect for maintenance, or was it from a storm? Or?
It was neglect by maintenance.
Yes.
Any other questions, Representative Foley? Thank you. Frank McNeil, National Grid.
Good evening again. Frank McNeil again. National Grid is opposed to this legislation. National Grid is a regulated entity. It is regulated by the Public Utilities Commission. In the construct of the various and sundry rules and regulations of the PUC, the National Grid just doesn't run its business the way it's being depicted. The men and women who work for National Grid are routinely, and in fact it's job one every single day of their shift, that if there is something that they see that is irregular, broken, worn, it's their job to report that back, and there's a process within the company to do those kinds of things. The company invests somewhere in the neighborhood of this coming year approximately $70 million on equipment upgrades, transformers, meters, all the various and sundry equipment that gets inspected. National Grid is required to produce an inspection report for its substations and other major pieces of equipment to the PUC. That's available. The second portion of this bill creates a requirement that National Grid report all its outages and service disruptions. It does. It does it on a daily basis when they are occurring. All this information goes to the PUC. This is a bill that's been sponsored, as Representative Fogarty mentioned, even prior to her getting here. This was a bill that the Union of National Grid Employees put forth each year. And we've talked about this bill, I think as long as I've been representing National Grid, which is since sometime around 1996. Ever since restructuring, we've been talking about this particular piece of legislation. So it's important to understand, and we welcome any future pieces of legislation about what occurred in Newport over the last week. We don't want to get into a big long conversation about that now. It certainly wasn't an equipment issue. No inspection would have found this particular, because it wasn't our equipment that failed and caused the issue that we have. So there's lots of different pieces, lots of different moving parts, but National Grid takes safety of its employees, safety of all of you very, very seriously, and you saw that on display over the course of the last week. And the same is true on the electric side. So we take this very, very serious, and it's not correct to say we don't, and it's not correct to say that we do not conduct inspections, we do not take care of things. I'm not sure of the 10 substation issue that supposedly went down due to neglect and maintenance. I'm going to find out about that. I don't remember it. I know we had storms and we lost substations as a result of trees falling and electrical wires and things of that sort. I don't remember of a situation where we had a maintenance-related outage on the magnitude of 10 substations. That would be, that would be the entire city of Providence. There's probably 15 substations in the city of Providence. I can't imagine what 10 substations would. It's news to me. I wrote it down. I'm going to check it out. So we're very opposed to this piece of legislation, and we look forward to any future bills that come up relating to inspection and equipment fees and that sort. Happy to answer any questions, Mr. Chairman.
Any questions from the committee? I understand that, there's regulations in place. Is anyone here from PUC? They sent a letter in opposition to it saying that a lot of this takes place, but I'm not really quite sure who's watching, who verifies this with National Grid. I mean, the PUC says it's going to happen, but they don't have the staff to go out there on the road and verify any of this stuff either.
So that's not a question for me. My sense is that that's the statutory arrangement that you created, not you, but legislatures in the past have created the Public Utilities Division to monitor and regulate these entities. We've had conversations about you all becoming the PUC. If that's what you want to do, good luck to you. I would not want to be in your position, but that's kind of the statutory framework that we participate in. That's what that's what the legislature has told us to do, and that's where we go. So this information, they have the technical expertise there. They have got engineers on their staff. They do have people that are trained and experienced in these particular issues. So again, I think at this particular point, it's the best place for this information to be being submitted. And I wish Cindy was here. She could detail out for you a little bit more in detail what exactly they do and how they manage that. I just don't know that, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you for your questions, Mr. Committee.
Just a quick question.
Yes.
These 10 how many substations are in Rhode Island?
I don't know off the top of my head, Representative.
1,000?
There's a lot of them.
So 10 being down on a percentile base, would
It
that
would be significant.
It would be significant.
Absolutely. It would, like I said, the city of Providence, it would be an entire community. And if it were one substation in one community, one substation in another community, it would have been a front page Providence Journal story. I just don't remember that happening. I'm going to have to go and check where that was.
That's possibly not true.
I am not aware of it. I am not aware of 10 substations being down causing service disruption.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to speak on 5169? Representative Carlson.
Thank you very much, committee members, and thank you, Representative Fogarty, for putting this bill in. I didn't have any idea that she had submitted it several years before, but it is timely, and I want to make some comments on it. And yes, Frank, I do want to talk about this in relation to Newport. I think it's extremely timely to talk about it. And I also think that if the bill keeps getting put in year after year after year, as you say, there must be something to it, because we're not going to keep writing bills that have no meaning year after year after year. So if there is a question around what the PUC already does and what this bill is trying to do, I would encourage this committee to get to the bottom of that. I looked at, and I applaud Representative Fogarty for putting this in. I've made some remarks on the floor about the crisis that captured my constituents last week. I think you're going to hear a lot more about it in the weeks and months ahead, because we really did have a crisis there that needs to be addressed. I think when I read this bill, in the first part, every electric company as defined shall promulgate written regs, guidelines, and procedures for periodic inspections. I'm not real comfortable with them writing their own guidelines for their own inspections. And when I look at the second part of the bill, which talks about the report identifying those communities or area that suffer outages, I mean, if we extend this to gas, which Representative Fogarty seems interested in doing, either by combining it with this bill, doing it in another bill, or even with electricity, there's a chance that that tower is coming across state lines. So we're not only going to be comparing it to other communities, but just to other states as well, and it's happening in other states. Because in this case of what happened in Newport, there really are no answers yet as to what happened, and I really want to encourage the members of this committee to wait for some real diagnostic and evaluatory information about what happened in Newport. There's conflicting information as to whether something happened in Massachusetts or whether something happened in Rhode Island, and we don't really know what that is yet, but I'm going to try to get to the bottom of that. So if we're talking about gas and extending it to gas, then we're talking about interstate transportation of carrying the gas. So it does get more complicated. And I think that when we look at the comparisons, and we look at the rates of outages and service disruptions, that's great, except it probably cost my community somewhere about $20 to $50 million last week. So there are tremendous costs associated with this. So I would encourage a piece of legislation like this, based on what I've had a crash course in the past 10 days, that we have to look at the costs of these outage disruptions, and we have to look at the reasons for these disruptions, so that we as policymakers or the PUC can take steps to make sure they are either eliminated completely, or at least greatly reduced. Because if this keeps happening, like what I experienced last week, we're going to have serious problems in this area. So thank you very much for letting me speak on the bill.
Any questions, Representative Carlson? Would anyone else like to speak on 5169? That'll conclude the hearing on that bill.